The next morning, glued this up yesterday. I just wanted to go over a couple of things. I mentioned the tape. I wanted to cover the tape, so when I open this up, I'll go over the tape. Also the clamps. At first I had all of the clamps kind of evenly distributed, but once I got the glue up done, which is this area here, I really wanted to make sure that the adjacent area by the glue up is just equally clamped and flat. And if this kind of has a little bit of a micro gap or something, it's not a big deal. There's no gaps, but this material is a bit flexible. So it's 40-pound density tooling board. It is the lightest weight tooling board I would consider making molds from. It doesn't hold edges very well. I could scratch into this edge pretty easily with something, so you got to be really careful with it. None of these clamps are actually clamped super tight. The front area where you have that wide flange, we can clamp these tight, but if you look around in the back here, notice I have the clamps, all of them are just right on the back edge of the tool. Because if you remember what the inside looks like, there's a step, like a 1/2 inch wide step. Sorry about that. Back here, it's on the upper tool, which is on the table right now. And then there's like kind of a void area in here before, well, it's all void until you get to the front flange. If I push those clamps farther in and really crank on them, you can actually see the trailing edge gap close slightly. Here's a picture just to kind of remind you of what it looks like inside. And you can see at the back edge that if I were to clamp forward of the rear edge, that I'd be putting pressure, off to the forward edge of that little standoff that's back there. So it literally will close the trailing edge. Back here, usually I have, this is a weird shaped tool for one, but usually it's a wing, right? Like a straight wing. But in the molds on the bottom tool, usually I have some pieces that come over and kind of come down, and I could set it on the table just like this, upside down, but there's like some standoffs that hold the mold face about 1 inch above the table. And that way, when I'm getting ready to do the closeout and I've put epoxy around the perimeter of this lower tool, I can rotate it and flip it on the table, which allows me to pick it up with the hoist and move it over above, so I can do the closeout. It only has to happen with larger tools, and I've gotten used to working with some larger tools that I can't lift, and I am by myself. This is actually not terribly heavy, but it is kind of large for one person. It's just an awkward shape. But I think what it has going for it is that if I were to roll, like if this was flipped over, with the mold side up, and I wanted to, and it was all wet with epoxy on there, I could flip it up onto its edge here and over there and have it vertical, kind of just like how I had it when I was drilling the bottom side. So the solution I've come up with is to add 3 removable standoffs, and they will use the alignment pin holes. They'll have stems on them. I can push them up through the holes and screw them from the back or put a nut on the back, whatever. But anyway, they'll be removable. So once I get the thing flipped over and then suspended over the upper tool for a closeout, then I'll just remove those before I close it up. So right now, the next step for me to do is unclamp it, but I also need to put lifting provisions in here, and I have to find the center of mass. And I see that the out at the tip, it's quite thick out there. It's also thick at the nose. And so I think in general, the center of mass is like right in somewhere right about here, maybe a little bit further back. So somewhere in here. And so I'm gonna probably drill either some holes in here and the one over there, or I might put holes here. But nonetheless, I'm going to get a few screws in here just to kind of tie this area together a little bit better, just for some insurance there. This mold half only weighs maybe 150 pounds. It's not all that heavy, but there are no mechanical fasteners in it yet. So I just want to hit a few of these with some screws. And then it's sitting on this table, but I have a hoist here. I have a hydraulic lift table down here. It has the blank or the block for the opposing mold half for the center section of the large plane. Here, you know, I cut this tool, I don't know, a week and a half ago. And this is actually a slight bit narrower than the center section on that one, like scale wise. That one, I think, comes out a little more and is cut this way. But the wingtips that go on that are 8.5 feet long. That's the actual airplane part. The mold's slightly longer than that. But I have this block here, and we may end up redesigning or, you know, changing the airfoil or something in it. So it's become a table right now. But I can put that other mold on here, and then I can roll it over under the hoist, and that'll simplify a lot. So here's me setting up to drill, searching in the drawer for the drill bit I never found. So grabbing a couple drill bits so I can do some pre-drilling for the screws that I'm putting in. One thing I wanted to share, and I know a lot of you aren't going to run out and buy these, but being in the cabinet business for so long, you're always looking for a really good fastener. And there is no better fastener to join a couple pieces of like 3/4 material. It could be melamine, even MDF, believe it or not, and plywood. There's nothing better than a confirmat screw. And this particular one is a 7x50. And so it has, these act as a dowel and a screw. This is a 7mm dowel here. It's 50 millimeters long, has a very coarse thread on it. And when you pre-drill for these, and I couldn't find that they make an actual pre-drill, a stepped drill bit with the two different diameters for these, but I couldn't find it, so I had to just improvise and do what I could. But essentially, you drill for the minor diameter here, and then you drill slightly smaller than that for the dowel action of it. And you can put like 4 sides of a box together, for example, dry with no glue, and try, you know, several different types of screws, and they're all just weak. The box will rack. But when you put it together with these, it feels as if it's been glued and cured without glue. And so, you know, when I used to build cabinets, we'd use glue, dowels, and these, all three. But this is the best screw. And so this is a great application for these. I don't use them much anymore, but I do keep them around. And so if you're ever wanting to build something out of like sheet goods like this, definitely consider these. Just looking at this, just about the entire airplane fits on what is the center section of the big plane. For perspective, that's pretty cool. All right, well, I just popped the tools apart. I was in the middle of trying to figure out how to grab this and broke a vice grip and this and that, so I had to go down the road and get some of the hardware I have. And I wanted to try to find the CG on this mold so I could lift it from one point or one area. I'll get some better bowl. I just had to use what I had lying around. I can either cut these shorter or get some better hardware, but it looks like I'm close to the CG. I'm not free yet. I'm still somewhat hung up on these. So I dropped these in just to keep everything in alignment. I don't want any sudden shift, lateral shift, and like it'll mess up the molds or mess up a part that's in the mold, like when I'm trying to set up for a closeout. And the primary reason why I have these guides are for when I'm closing out the tool and I have epoxy in specific areas that I don't want to smear them in case the mold goes sideways or something. And then I just wanted to show you the tape. So when I taped this off, so I don't get epoxy on the adjacent surfaces here, it's a layer of tape, and then I put a piece of tape here, so nothing from there drips down onto here. So essentially there's two layers of tape holding the molds apart here. So to even everything out and make sure I'm not just adding some weird angle here, I just put 2 layers of tape here and all the way around everywhere. So just to keep it even, I've just doubled up and put 2 layers of tape around the whole thing. And then I'm lightly clamping. I'm lightly clamping so I'm not flexing the tool down in between these pieces of tape, for example. So I lowered the tool onto this EPP on these foam pads and changed out the lifting strap. I didn't really like it, the one I had. This one holds it evenly. And then I did get pretty close with the CG on this. Right now it's just hanging on its own, and it's because of this piece of lead in there, a couple pieces of lead. So that's how it will sit, and I'm good with that. I will get some hot glue on that lead. So I'll hot glue that lead in. I was just kind of thinking. And then I'll try to see if I can get this flipped over without touching the surface to the table. And maybe in between lifting, I can take these and just fold them over this way and, I don't know, tape them or something. That way it could sit on the table without these getting in the way. So pretty decent setup. So I'm putting everything back on the bench over there. Get the top mold out of the way. And then here's the flip. This went very easy. So I do think I can flip this tool without a hoist. And if I put the 3 standoffs on the flanges there, I should have no trouble as long as the table's big enough to flip that upper tool over on its own and then hoist it from there. All right, got the tools back down on the table. I took this one off of I was gonna put this on the hydraulic table or leave that one on there, and I will be doing that once I'm ready to open and close the tools. But until then, and I have access to this big table, I'll just use it for the time being. This is what the squeeze out looks like after that final glue up. So you can see there's, you know, a fair amount of glue here, but it's only attached in a little micro thin line. And so the process of getting rid of this glue is almost the same process that I used to get rid of the ridge that I got rid of here. We're already taped off here. I'll break away most of this. So let's see if we can. If you can see, it breaks pretty close to the surface. Sometimes I'll even get like a little hammer and just tap at it. All right, I was reminded yesterday of what not to do. I'm not sure why I strayed away from what I think I forgot my method, but the way to do this side, since you can't clean up the squeeze out after the glue up until the next day, is to mask all the way past the edge of the glue joint and then trim it flush with a razor blade, the tape. That way when you glue up, when you want to break this epoxy away, it's only the glue joint thickness epoxy, not attached to the surface. So when I started tapping it with a hammer, it was like pulling away chunks of the board right next to the glue joint. And once I saw that happening, I figured, you know what, it's probably going to get glazed anyway in spots. Let me just get rid of this epoxy and I'll fill it with glaze and move forward. So that's what ended up happening. It doesn't look pretty, but it'll be good in the end. So I started sanding this ridge, and as soon as I started sanding it, the dust started piling up right here. So you can tell, you know, if we cared about this edge, which we care somewhat about it, but I'll just end up smoothing it out anyway. I don't care if it's perfectly flat, but this surface is proud of this surface, and so that you can see where the sanding block is hitting. You can see an area right in here that it's not even touching. It's touching over here, and it's touching all right here. And so from here to here, that is the area that would get some filler, right? So I would spread some glaze here, proud of this surface and this surface, and then when I block it down, then it would all clean up flat, right? So this is not a big deal. It's just where I stick the vacuum tape. I'll keep sanding at it and just make it to where there's no step or anything anywhere, but I wouldn't glaze the side. But on the top surfaces, this shouldn't need anything. I'm gonna sand this. Here, we'll do this right now. Let's see if I can set this here. All right, I'll start hitting this. The first thing I'm noticing is that it's hitting here and here. It's not hitting here because there's still a ridge here holding the block up. I have a weird angle here, but I'm gonna keep going. So notice I didn't continue to just sand in this one little spot. Once I got it close, I started sanding and bringing it all the way out here and keeping this thing flat. And this is pretty well perfect here. You can see there's a chip right there. None of this is a big deal. This will have to get glazed anyway. And so will this. So there's always gonna be some amount of glaze. It's just not gonna look quite as pretty because it's not gonna go from like a perfect straight line to a blended glaze spot. It's gonna be like a little chunky looking, but the surface will be the same as it would have been regardless. Well, my phone decided to run out of storage yesterday, so I wasn't able to record the glazing process, but I ended up glazing it and sanding those areas. I think I may need a little bit more glaze possibly, but I got some epoxy on it at the end of the day so I could sand it the next morning.